Hello and welcome to the Eye on the U podcast, the Miami Herald's Miami Hurricanes podcast. I'm David Wilson, and I'm joined, as always, on the other line by our Hurricanes beat writer here at the Herald. It's Susan Miller-Degnan. Susan, what's going on?
Well, we're counting. How many days in counting? Football, finally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
less than a week. We're recording this Thursday. ACC Media Days have wrapped up in North Carolina. Susan couldn't be there this year, but obviously we've got some stuff to talk about from that. And then by the time next time you guys listen to an episode after this one, training camp will be underway. So we'll wrap things up with the sort of camp slash or very early season preview we promised last week. But first, ACC Media Days, Mario Cristobal, Tyler Van Dyke, Cam Kinchins, Matt Lee, all up in Charlotte to talk about the outlook for this season for Miami. And, you know, ACC Media Days, it's always as much about the PR spin, right? And setting that it's the first chance you get to kind of set the narrative of what this team or of what this season can be. And for Mario Cristobal, the one thing I think is maybe kind of notable is this team was bad last year. They went 5-7. They didn't qualify for a bowl game. You know, some coaches go to media days and especially when they're early on in a rebuild, they'll talk about how we're early on, right? And there's a long way to go. And that's certainly part of what Mario Cristobal is talking about. But just as much, I think he is kind of, you know, he's not shying away from expectations for this season, right? He's not talking like they're going to be a national championship contender, but you know, he clearly believes, or at least is putting out in the world, and that means something, right? That this team should be good this year. After the last year is an outlier and will kind of be a one-off, and Miami will be right back to what we expect from them, and building toward more than that.
Yeah, and I don't even know if he's making it like last year was an outlier. I think all along he's, as you know, during the season has said this takes time.
Yeah.
And we're on the right path, and I'm doing everything I have to do to, you know, make this team a champion. And he said again that, you know, this week on Joe Rose show also, while he was at the ACC meetings, that there's no doubt in his mind this team will be a championship team. He didn't say this year.
Yeah, not this year. Yeah.
It will return to its former greatness. He's sure of that, and that, you know, people just have to be patient, which he's said all along. Or he hasn't even said people have to be patient, that they know inside the program that it is a process, and that they're doing the right things, and they have done a lot really to change things up. For this coming season. A lot of new coaches, a lot of new players, a lot of players left. So yeah, it was upbeat, and it's always upbeat. It's always, you know, the best. All the kids say it's the best culture they've seen since they've been here. That's every year, but I do think a lot of changes have been made.
Well, I went on Larry Bluestein's radio show earlier in the week, actually, and we were talking about all the changes Miami made. And to me, that is the most, if I'm a Miami fan, and if I'm a kind of like more pessimistic Miami fan, because there's obviously some people who are like true Mario believers, right? But if you're a kind of a standard Miami fan who was excited about Mario Cristobal, saw the way last year went, and understandably have maybe kind of tempered your long-term expectations, short-term and long-term expectations, the most encouraging thing to me is, and something we're going to definitely talk about later on in this episode, is particularly with the coaching staff, the overall, he has done 7 new coaches after just 1 year. You know, coaches and Mario can come off as kind of like a stubborn guy, right? Like you know, has his philosophies, sticks to them, believes they're going to work. For the most part, they have throughout his career. You know, even going back to when he was at FIU and obviously at Oregon as well. But he saw that whatever they did last year didn't work, right? And that's an admission of failure and a willingness to adjust. There have been some good football coaches, good people on every line of work, right? Whose failure is stubbornness. I mean, I know I wasn't around for the golden era, but I know everyone complains that offense was humming, but he stuck with D'Onofrio on defense, right? And maybe if they had made a change there, that would have gone differently. And Mario could have definitely gone the same way, right? He could have said, we had so many injuries last year. Could have made all the excuses, right? And said, we've got this. I mean, how many times did he say, like, these guys have all been successful in other places. There's no reason it shouldn't work here, essentially. But he saw it didn't work. He wasn't afraid to pivot away from it. And, it's kind of like year one, part two, it feels like a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Mario does talk a lot about the past regimes
Yes.
at UM, and how they didn't like exactly set the table for him. So I don't know if that's an excuse or not, but I 100% agree with you that he's doing things. He's doing positive things for the program, and we talked about recruiting, and this isn't a recruiting one this week, but we talked about it as recruiting is always good. So that with all the other changes he's made, I think it's kind of exciting. I think the coaches, we're going to talk about the coaches, right? I just think that it's going to be great with the new coaches. I really sense that, especially after the spring.
Yeah. I kind of guess kind of pivot there to specifically the Shannon Dawson component of this, because obviously Tyler Van Dyke up in North Carolina this week was asked a lot about the move from Josh Gaddis to Shannon Dawson, maybe the comparisons to when Brett Lashley took over, and he obviously had his breakout freshman year. What do you make of the way that, and we've talked to Tyler about Shannon Dawson, so this isn't entirely new, but we're getting close to the season. They've had a long time now to work together.
Yes.
What stands out to you about the way that he the kind of thoughts that he gave this week about Shannon Dawson?
Well, I think he, and I talked to him too recently. I think he gets along apparently very well with him. I've never got that feeling about Gaddis with anybody. He was not an easy guy supposedly to get along with. He was always nice to us, but we heard so many things about the former Josh Gaddis coordinator. And Dawson is what Tyler keeps repeating is that he has the freedom now. He has the freedom to change plays at the line of scrimmage, which he didn't really have last year, obviously, because he keeps talking about that. How I know that Dawson loves to pass, or he
air raid guy,
an air raid guy, but I think he also loves to run. Oh my God, that's so cliche, but it's I think he's smart. I think Dawson.
Yeah, he's not Mike Leach, right? It's not a Mike Leach offense where they're throwing 65 times in every game, no matter what.
No, he's smart. And Mario Cristobal is old school guy. He likes to run also, and that's good. You need to be able to run. I think it also is not going to be like people think it's going to be a no huddle offense, no huddle, like a hurry up, no huddle. And it's not totally going to be that. They're going to be in huddle. They're going to huddle a lot of the time. And then he'll mix it up. And sometimes there will be no huddle. It'll be a faster pace sometimes. I think he's going to change it up, but I think there will be a lot of huddling. I just very psyched to see. I think they have a very good chemistry. I think he trusts Tyler, and I think it was a very, very good hire. So and we're going to get to the O-line later, right?
Yeah.
That has to do with obviously that affects.
I mean, I kind of got the idea. Like I could see the argument behind why Josh Gaddis was the right. Just if you think that you want to run that offense long term, like growing pains are worth it. Obviously, they pivoted from their thinking in the last 9 months, or at least from thinking that Josh Gaddis was the right answer to that solution or right answer to that problem. But I got the idea. I get the theory of like, this is what we want to run long term. If it makes us worse in the short term, it's worth it. But at the same time, like, it's interesting where Tyler kind of stands in the college football quarterback hierarchy right now, but like coming off off his first year,
right?
You had to be thinking he was going to be one of the best guys in the country, and guys like that don't come around very often. And I mean, I think both of us kind of thought it was a mistake last year to change the offense so dramatically when you have a quarterback like Tyler Van Dyke, who was legitimately one of the best quarterbacks in the country running Rhett Lashley's offense. Obviously, this is different than Rhett Lashley's offense, but I mean, you were never going to hire someone who was just going to, you couldn't clone Rhett Lashley and bring him back, right? Like you were going to lose him. You're going to have to change something. But this makes so much more sense, at least for the short term. And when you have a quarterback like Tyler Van Dyke, I think like short term matter. I mean, look at like North Carolina, right? They've got Drake May, who is,
Uh,
you know, Heisman contender, potential like top 5, top 10 pick in next year's draft. And like, understandably, like they feel like this is a year where they can contend, right? They feel like this, are they going to compete with Georgia and Alabama and, all the great SEC teams and Ohio State, Michigan, the teams you might run into if you make it to the playoff? I don't think so, but you can compete in the ACC. You pull off one, you upset Clemson, and all of a sudden you're in the ACC championship game. Like when you have a quarterback like that, you've got to try to win right now. Again, because like I know the end goal is a national championship, but for a program like for North Carolina, winning an ACC would be huge. For a program like Miami that hasn't literally never won the ACC, it'd be a big deal. Like this is not a national championship roster. I don't know if it's an ACC championship roster, but when you have a quarterback like that who can elevate you so much, you have to gear everything around that, right? You have to gear it around trying to win when you have a guy like that, because I mean, we thought Jake Garcia was going to be it never works out the way you expect. When you have a guy like that, you got to try to win.
Exactly. And I think that's what Mario Cristobal has done. Mm-hmm. I mean, the O-line, he's built everything around that quarterback.
Yeah. So I think his philosophy, and we've talked about it a couple of times that they went so heavy on offensive line recruiting last year, and then this year the whole talk was like they want to try to get this great defensive line class. I think Mario's got, and I think this is correct, like if you have a really good offensive line, a really good defensive line, your floor as a program is going to be hot. Like it's Wisconsin, right? It's 8 wins every year. And then when you're Miami and you can get an elite quarterback to come play for you, and you should be able to get elite wide receivers, you can get that ceiling high as well. But so yeah, they're gearing it around that part of it. Makes sense to gear around the future. And then when you got, like you said, when you have a quarterback like Tyler, you gotta build everything around him to win now. You only got him for one more year, probably.
Yeah. And that's what they've done. And now it's I think all eyes are on Tyler, really. All eyes are, does he do it? Does he get hit again? Does he, does the pressure get to him? Mm-hmm. Kind of, can he stay strong? So we'll see.
Before we pivot a little bit to some of the news and our second half of the show, Cam Kinchins and Matt Lee were the other two guys there. Just anything stand out from what those guys said?
Well, they're both super confident.
Yep.
And we kind of knew that about Cam last year, when he's kind of was the guy that spoke up when everything like went down. Mm-hmm. And said, hey, if you don't want to be here, get out. We just want the guys that really want to do it and really want to work hard, and are not complaining and all that good stuff. And he proved it with his play, but he was very confident. He's kind of funny. And he believes that he and James Williams are going to be the best safety tandem in the country, for example. And he thinks James Williams could end up being an All-American this year. And he's just very upbeat, but he's, very confident. But the thing is, he puts the work behind it.
Yeah.
Puts the work in behind it. He's very obviously.
Yeah. I mean, on you look at him and he doesn't look like an NFL safety.
He doesn't look that big.
But he's going to be an NFL safety because he's super smart. Like all the, you hear the cliches thrown around a lot about like a first in, last out, that kind of stuff. But that's all true with Cam. I mean, he had, what was it, 6 interceptions last year? I remember in high school he had a year with like 8 interceptions. Like, and he's just always kind of had that high IQ that
He's
He
yeah.
makes everything work for him.
And then as far as Matt Lee goes, another, I mean, I have only heard really great things about him, David. And I mean, I've met him and talked to him a little bit. He's a very personable, confident, smart young man, and but also kind of a leader type. He's strong-willed, and again, smart. That goes a long way, and I think he's super talented.
He feels like we talk about this sometimes, where like some college kids, there's a huge range of. I mean, there's 18-year-olds and there's well, I guess there's like 27-year-olds on this team too, or however old McCormick is, like 25. But so a lot of times kids, you talk to them and they feel like kids because they are, and sometimes they feel like adults. And Matt Lee, he's an older guy.
Sure.
Played, what, 4 years already at UCF. This will be his 5th year. So he's an older guy who's been through a lot and had to be a leader there, and obviously comes into Miami and
leader and confident and good. I mean, he's good. He knows the field. He knows what's, he knows
graded out very well in Pro Football Focus stuff, if you care about that kind of stuff. So
yeah, he knows what's in front of him, and he's a great communicator, and I would think a calming influence for the younger kids.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably going to start a freshman at right tackle. Like, that's what we both think, right? So it helps to have.
And so I think Matt Lee is like super is going to be is one of the guys that are very important to the success of this team.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason they brought him there, right? Like, they obviously, one is because he's a good communicator and a good interview, but they only bring the guys there who are like leaders.
Interview on the shore. I mean, yeah, he is. But yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's. Let's hope everybody stays healthy. That's what I'm hoping.
Well, yeah, let's wrap up with that before we pivot over to our preview. A couple, the newsiest tidbits out of the week were injury stuff. Trevante Citizen, who, as people might remember, got hurt in the preseason last year. Still not going to be ready for probably the start of the year. They're hoping he'll be back at some point this season. A little disappointing there, I think. Hopes are obviously very high for him. Hopefully we get to see him healthy, and the same way that they kind of brought Don Chaney back at the end of last year, got his feet wet before coming back for a full season the following year. Hopefully they can do a similar thing with Trevante Citizen. The more concerning injury piece, though, is the Zion Nelson status. A guy we have basically seen on a football field once in the last 18 months, I guess. Yeah, like what?
I think somebody said he played 2 games. I only saw
played one A&M. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Texas A&M.
Yeah, I think he had down
maybe he dressed for one other game, but he only played in one game. And then we just never saw him again. We didn't see him at all in the spring. We saw him. We didn't see him on the field in the spring. And they're still hoping he's going to be ready for the start of the regular season, but not going to be ready for the start of camp. And this knee issue, or maybe there's other stuff too. It just keeps lingering.
Yeah, it's crazy because like last year, right around this time,
it was a media day. I remember we talked to him. He had a brace on his knee.
Had a brace, and he said that he had surgery at that point 3 weeks ago. So this
was like early July. He had the surgery. I think he said maybe like July 4th weekend.
Yeah, he had exactly, and he was given a 6 to 8 timetable. 6 to 8 week, timetable for his return, and
we kind of all thought they were gearing up to play him in the A&M game, which is what happened. But
he just, whatever happened, they never. What's kind of interesting is no one ever really got specific about it. About there were just complications.
He said it was like a knee scope, is the way he made it sound, where they went in and cleaned some of the cartilage out, and.
But they did that also. You mean, again, maybe it was the other knee? I don't
know. So, I mean, there might have been other injuries that happened. We don't know. It's been a long time, and
a year ago it was the floating cartilage.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yep.
In the left, I think in the left knee, maybe.
It's
left knee. So, but I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not sure about the newest thing. And I mean, all I know is every year people keep saying, the last couple of years, they keep saying Zion Nelson, an NFL prospect. I'm sure, and that, once he gets in and all that, but now I'm not convinced until I actually see him in. I mean, to me, I don't know, why isn't he back
Yeah.
now?
It's like a sad situation because this guy was,
He's
I
a
mean,
great guy too.
yeah, and still
Yeah.
is, like a tackle with that size and athleticism. If he gets on the field and is awesome, yeah, he'll be a pretty high pick in the draft. But yeah, we're now like 3 years out from when we've been talking about that, and for various reasons, we have not seen it come to fruition. And the injury, like you said, it's hard. They say they're hoping he'll be ready for the start of the season, but they said the same thing last year and then in the spring.
Yeah, it's kind of been
It's been a long time. It's been, this whatever this knee situation, or again, like I said, maybe
whatever
things we don't know about.
Yeah, exactly.
Effectively has kept him out for more than 12 months. And it's not, as far as we know, not a torn ACL, not like a broken bone or anything. It was a surgery that was thought to be quote unquote minor surgery. There's this is why there's never any such thing as minor surgery. But not a thing that when he went in to get operated on it, no one thought it was going to be last this long.
No, true. So we're all hoping he gets back. That'll be a nice story when he does.
Okay, let's move. That's a good place to jump off to our other topic, which is our camp preview. What I've got done here is I've spotlighted 5 areas where I think Miami has a chance to be better this year. They've got nowhere to go but up at some of these spots after a 5-7 season and failing to qualify for a bowl game. And one of those spots is, I think, the spot on the field that understandably has people the most hyped about Miami's potential is the offensive line. Zion is a huge X factor, obviously. But you bring in, as we said, Matt Lee. Javion Cohen is, a potential, one of the top guards in the country. Jalen Rivers, I think, is one of the maybe the most underrated guy on this roster. And we mentioned maybe a freshman right tackle starting in Francis Mangoa, who, was one of the best tackle recruits to ever commit to Miami. So, the offensive line, I think, again, even if Zion doesn't play, even if Francis has some growing pains, I think is going to be really solid. But again, as we said last week, the potential for this unit is super high. It has a chance to be like one of the best offensive lines in the country.
Yeah, and I really think it does.
And because of Mario, you believe it, right? Because that's like,
well, I believe it because we've seen these guys,
yeah,
and they're pretty impressive. And I mean, they're
big, they're huge. When Jalen Rivers is like your small guy, you're big.
Yeah,
and Matt Lee is your small guy, but he's a center, so it's different. But he's a big center.
And
it's not like Corey Gaynor or Ja'Kai Clark. Like, they had some smaller centers. He's big.
And Mario said that Francis Mauigoa, who's the freshman, the 5-star, right? He was one of the top 2 offensive linemen in the country, recruits that Miami got, and the other one, of course, is at Miami too.
Yeah, Samson Okunlola.
Yeah. Yeah, Okunlola. Anyway, he's up to Francis is up to 343 pounds or 342 pounds right now, 342. And wait to hear this. He has 20% body fat. So Mario said that's broke a record for muscle something density or whatever on the team all time. And right behind him is Okunlola, who he said is like right behind him, the same thing, so that's kind of cool, right?
I mean, those 2 guys are freaks, right? That's why those guys are like 5-star tackles, right? Like there's levels to this. and you have to be a physical specimen like that to be 5-star. You can be a really good offensive lineman without that, but those guys who are 5 stars are the guys who come into college and you say, oh, that guy might be the number 1 pick one day.
For sure. And then we already talked about at center, Matt Lee, right? From UCF transfer. And now at left, well, at least in the in the spring, it was at left tackle. We had Jalen
Right.
Rivers, who had
Again, I think ideally they'd like him to be at guard and Zion at left tackle, but at least to start camp, they're definitely going to have Jalen Rivers as their left tackle.
I'm not talking when you have a guy that hasn't played in whatever 2 years, or I mean, I'm not even thinking about that now. I'm thinking of reality, what we have in front of us, and especially because Mario already has said about that that Zion's not going to be around in the beginning. So I think Jalen Rivers, who's extremely talented, will be at left tackle, and Javion Cohen, the transfer from Alabama, will be at left guard. And just think about that. You got Javion Cohen, and then you've got Matt Lee next to each other. Jalen River. I mean, it's a good. I think it's a good offensive line. Now they've got to get some depth. They've got to work.
Well, they got two other guys who, like, Inez Cooper started a lot of games last year and looked promising for a freshman,
and he ended up at right guard. So
Lawrence Seymour started some. So they have a couple other guys with starting experience, which is just a nice perk to have too.
Yeah, very nice. I just again got to stay healthy. They got to stay. It's very hard to keep those big guys. Got to stay healthy. But yeah.
Another spot they have a chance to be better. This is going to be the easiest one is quarterback. Because if Tyler Van Dyke plays like 8 games, it's an improvement from last year, right? Like they're going to be better at that spot. We talked a lot about him at the top half. I don't think we need to go dive too much into it, but got to stay healthy, and we want to see what he can do in this offense.
Yeah. You said
I'd expect him to be a lot closer to the Tyler Van Dyke of 2 years ago than the Tyler Van Dyke of last year.
Yeah, so do I. And with that line, he's going to have more confidence.
Yeah.
Just stay healthy, Tyler.
Maybe we can, from there, we'll go to the one hold up with Tyler Van Dyke optimism, but it's an area where I think, again, low hanging fruit to improve, is wide receiver, which is, is maybe the weakness of the roster other than quarterback because of the injuries.
Right.
But when, sometimes the best way to improve year over year is not to find your strengths and get better at it. It's to find your weaknesses and make improve, go from bad in an area to average makes a big difference. I don't know if the wide receivers will be able to do that, but they have like a lot of room to improve on last year.
Yeah, they do. And I mean, every year we say the same thing.
I know. It's hard to look at the room and be like, there's not talent there, right? Like they've got guys who are big recruits. They've got, Tyler Harrell coming in as a transfer is pretty interesting to add an element of speed. Xavier Restrepo being hurt last year hurt a lot too. I think injuries kind of been forgotten a little bit. He and Tyler have obviously great chemistry. A full year of Colby Young can only help. Remember how it was such a whirlwind for him to get in last year. So
still got Brashard Smith,
who I love.
I know, and he's great, and he does it all. He does everything right. A little bit.
You'd like to see him get like a little bit more consistently involved, right? But once a game, it feels like he does something awesome. And some freshmen, right? We both like Ray Joseph, but they need Cole. To me, it's like Colby Young and Tyler Harrell, because I have. Like, I kind of know what I'm getting with Restrepo, I feel like. Colby Young with the chance to take a leap, and Harrell as a guy who his just speed is going to make him such a weapon. Those are guys who I think are the kind of the X factors in that group.
I think I think Jacoby George is
Jacoby George too. Yeah.
I think he's an X factor, and he looked really good in the spring.
Yeah.
And seems very confident, and the coaches seem really high on him. Another one, I don't know if I call him an X factor, but I think he's really big body, strong. Isaiah Horton.
Yeah.
Is another guy.
We just have not seen a lot of him, but they seem to be excited about him. He was a pretty decent level recruit. And he's big, right? Like he's the guy who
he's big.
Similar to Colby Young.
And you got the little Ray Joseph.
Yeah.
Right. Who will play? I bet you he'll play. He will play.
It's similar to where they were a couple, like every year, right? It's like they've got all these guys who are like, ooh, that guy's interesting. That guy's interesting. That guy's interesting. They got a lot of guys who are interesting. You need like one or two of them to pop. And we've been saying the same thing every year, basically.
But I think true, exactly. I think Colby Young, if Tyler is better, he's gonna break out.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
one thing that's great about Tyler is he's not afraid to like fling it and like basically say, let my
no,
wide receiver make a play, right? Like how many
yep,
Charleston Rambo, he did that a lot with. And with Colby, like Colby's best games were like Tyler was like, that guy's taller than the guy guarding him. I'm just gonna throw it high up in the air and let him do something with it.
yeah, and they've been practicing like 3 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
those guys together during the summer. And
Yep.
what he told me that once a week, 7-on-7s with the defense, and then they do all kinds of stuff together at Green Tree. And he said the timing has been
Yeah.
fantastic, that their timing is better than it's ever been. So okay, everybody's positive,
Uh-huh.
and I'm drinking the Kool-Aid a little, but not too much. But a little bit.
Let's speed through the last couple. Another position that
Okay.
has been like a weakness, I feel like, for the last couple of years that I actually feel really good about is linebacker.
Yep.
That's definitely another place where they have a chance to get better. And that unit became pretty good by the end of last year when Basaint was out there making plays. He's going to be heavily involved. They bring in Francisco Malingoa, Francis's older brother, transfer from Washington State. Who was
Who's great.
awesome in the spring. Like he looked so good in that spring.
And really smart and a leader.
Yeah.
And he calls the field and stuff. He's really good.
And then obviously Corey Flagg back again, and that guy's been a starting
Smart.
linebacker for a long time. So
Good.
you got three bodies there that I think are all varying degrees of reliable / exciting to fill two spots.
And
I feel good about that group.
I always like Keontre. I always
Yeah,
like
you got Keontra. Yep.
Yep. So I know it's Keontra, but they always
I
say
know.
Keontre. So I got to remember that.
Yeah,
But
another guy who started a lot of games in his career. So
yeah,
I feel good about that group. I think that group's going to be good.
I do
Chase
feel
Smith,
good,
Chase
but
Smith has been
yeah, but
interesting at various points.
Chase Smith is still injured. I think
injured.
he's still injured, and
Mhm.
he's going to be. It's going to take him a while, I think, to get back. Yeah. I mean, linebackers, they just. Oh God, it's like cliche. They got to stay healthy because there's really
they're just not deep yet.
there's
Right?
nobody
They're not
else.
Alabama. They're not Georgia. Like
No, they're not deep. But if somebody gets hurt, they're in trouble.
Right.
So.
Yep. The last one is the coaching staff, which we alluded to at the top. 7 new coaches. You want to read? You have the list. I think you have the list in front of you.
Some.
You want to read them off?
Well, let me. Yeah, Okay, there's some really impressive
people.
ones. Okay,
Yeah.
we got Shannon Dawson, who's the new offensive coordinator, and also quarterbacks coach. Remember last year they had a separate quarterbacks coach.
Josh Gaddis was the wide receivers coach and offensive coordinator.
Correct. And Frank Ponce
was just the quarterbacks coach.
Yeah, and he left. Okay, so that's Shannon Dawson now, right? QB coach coordinator. Running backs coach Tim Harris Jr., who I just love, who came back to Miami, a local guy. And he was a star, a great runner at Miami, star athlete. And then we got Kevin Beard
coming back, also another alum,
national champion in 2001, and really good. I think, David, that Kevin Beard has done a really good job, and he's kind of like a father figure. I don't know. He's really been getting like
the players seem to really like him. The recruits seem to really like him.
Really
wide receivers coach, and a guy who was successfure too, right? Like those were good offenses he was part of at
he's
Toledo.
Really good. Yeah, he's really good, and he takes the entire like human perspective, not just the athletic stuff. He's really good. Okay, so he's Kevin Beard. Receivers, you have defensive coordinator. Oh, we should say
Cody. We got tight end coach also, Cody Woodeel.
Is now the tight end,
swapping in for Stephen Field, who goes into the recruiting office.
Yeah, exactly. And also seems like a great guy. The guys know him because he was always around, right? I don't know him as well personally, but he seems great. And then you've got, who did I miss on offense? I'm good on offense. On defense, you have Lance Guidry, who's the new defensive coordinator. You got who's also is supposedly very, very good, and inside linebackers coach Derek Nicholson. And then you've got Jason Taylor. We all know Jason Taylor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Miami Dolphin is now he He's now the defensive line coach, as is
Yeah.
Joe Salavea.
Yeah.
Okay, it seems like they have, I don't know, they're both of them coaching, but Jason Taylor, as we know, is going to do a lot with the Russians.
Yeah, it's going to be like an ends interiors thing, I would guess.
Exactly. And then we've got who else? I think
you got everyone. You got Derek Nicholson, linebackers coach. So
and we got Ponset left, Kevin Smith left, the running backs coach, and Kevin Steele left, who was the linebackers coach and the co-coordinator, and Charlie Strong left, and Rod Ryan. Just a lot of changes.
Yeah, a lot of changeover. So yeah, that's obviously a spot where a lot of question marks anytime you switch that many bodies in, but obviously they made those changes for a reason. They want to get better. They want that staff to be better, and we'll see how it all pans out. We'll be back next week, and we will have actual football kind of to talk about, some real practices. We'll see how much we get to see, how many guys we get to talk to, all that kind of stuff. Until then, you can follow Susan on Twitter at @SMillerDegnan. You can follow me on Twitter at DBWilson2. Yeah, we'll be back next week, and season's getting here quickly, so
yes, it is.
We got a lot of football to talk about now. We're in the full swing of things. So
we forgot to mention one thing. We forgot to mention the Schnellenberger Cup.
Oh yeah, right.
Schnellenberger Trophy.
Miami and Louisville. Now they're going to play each other more at a Schnellenberger Trophy.
I love it. They're playing for a trophy, and it's Howard Schnellenberger's bronze cowboy boots. I mean, that's so weird.
Yeah,
that's going to be the trophy.
That's a great weird college football trophy.
Yeah, but
Miami doesn't have enough of them.
Should have been his pipe. But here's the thing. I guess at Louisville they wanted something that was more Louisville because it's a Louisville commission or whatever sports commission that's doing it. So anyway, we got to go.
Yep. Thanks as always for listening. And we'll talk to you guys next week.